Welcome. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
And be sure to mute yourselves if you haven't, unless you have a question, of course. So I had a thought, and it's not directly connected to what we're reading now, although I hope someday I will have a better idea of the significance of the material that we're reading now. But this never occurred to me before. And that is, of course, the stories that are also somewhat puzzling about Abraham, Sarah, and Pharaoh, and Abraham, Sarah, and Abimelech, and Yitzchak, Isaac, and Rivka, and Rebekah, and Abimelech. And they all have to do with Abraham and Isaac saying that their wives are not their wives, but rather their sisters. And the reason for it is they fear that they will be killed by the king if in fact they because their wives are so beautiful, and they will be killed. And after all these years, it occurred to me that that is exactly the story of King David and Bathsheba, where he actually sees how beautiful Bathsheba is, and he arranges to have the Uriah, the Hittite, killed. And I'm thinking that there is foreshadowing possibly in that story. There are a lot of ironies in that story. There's a lot to unpack in that story. And the fact that we have some foreshadowing here, the fact that Solomon is the legitimate king of Bathsheba and King David, that is on one side. And of course, David is I believe, the grandson or great-grandson of Ruth and Boaz. Boaz is from the tribe of Judah. There's a lot of what you might call illegitimate relationships going on there. And without unpacking it all now, just the fact that there is, in fact, that parallel going on there. And I'm wondering if there is some greater significance in these stories in regards to all of that. And of course, the Messiah ultimately coming, and Mashiach simply meaning anointed one. And somehow part of, our belief in one ultimate God that encompasses every element of reality, and the ability, and perhaps this is something that is very deep and something very great, to say that evil, things that we might consider evil, actually can be a foundation of something that ultimately is very, very good. And trying to discuss and understand better, you might say, the mechanics of that process. But the idea that because God ultimately is the divine king, the divine judge, etc., that everything in this world ultimately, if properly channeled, can be for good. So just thought I'd start out with that thought, even though it isn't isn't part of directly of what's going on here. Although what's happening to Isaac, of course, is sort of again, in some ways, foreshadowing of the trouble that the Jewish people have. This is a dynamic that gets echoed throughout history, that when the Jewish people flourish in a particular society other than in the land of Israel, they have to experience terrible reactions on the part of the rest of the population. When they are successful in Israel, they tend to go away from God. But that seems to happen also under any condition. Any comments before we get back into the text? I want to let you do that. So please feel free. Okay, nothing. Go straight into it. All right. All right. And if you want to bring it up at some other point, please feel free. Vayashov Yitzchak. No, sorry. Vayashav Yitzchak. Let me think about it. Whether this is from, no, it would have to be Vayashov, because the accent is here. Vayashov Yitzchak, Vayachpor et Be'erot Hamayim. Okay, so this is actually, I believe, from, although interesting, I'm looking to see, yes. So the Aramaic clarifies what root this is from, right? So Yashav is to dwell, but Vayashov is from shuv, from the to return, to do again. And this Aramaic word vitav makes it very clear that it doesn't mean to dwell, but it means to return. So Yitzchak returned, vayachpor et beirot, and he dug out the beirot hamayim, the wells of water, the asher chafru bimei Avraham Aviv, which had been dug during the days of Abraham, his father. Let me just finish the sentence. We'll go back and take a look at the Rashi. Vayistatmun plishtim, and I believe we'd have to say that the Philistines had blocked, had filled up, acharei mot Avraham, after Abraham had died. Vayikra lahem shemot, and he called them by name, kishemot asher kara lahem aviv, according to the names which his father had called them. And again, certainly on a superficial level, the idea of him following in his father's footsteps, understanding this both literally and, as Lauren had suggested yesterday, figuratively, but the idea of really trying to continue the traditions of his father. Let's take a look. So, Vayashov Vayachpor, right? He came back and he once again dug out. Et Be'erot Asher Chafru Bimei Avraham, the wells that had been dug, or that had during the days of Abraham his father, Uflishtim Sidmum, and the Philistines had filled them up. But Kodem Shenasa Yitzchak. So here's the new little part that Rashi is adding for us. And before Isaac went away from Gerar, Hazar v'Chafran, he went back and he redug them. He dug them out again. So there's this tension, right, between Isaac and his neighbors and his Philistine neighbors. But the fact that he wasn't undeterred from having to try and once again dig out these wells, these sources of water. So let's go on. Vayach Peru Avdei Yitzchak ben Nachal, and then remember he had left and gone further away from the city. So the servants of Isaac dug out in the wadi, Vayimtzeu Sham, and there they found the Mayim Chayim. They found a well of living water, right? Fresh water. Vayarivu Ra'e Gerar. So now the shepherds of Gerar quarreled Imro'e Yitzchak with the shepherds of Isaac. They were saying, Lanu Hamayim, the water belongs to us. Well, the idea of water rights and the disputes over water rights is nothing new, right? It is nothing new. Is there a comment? I'm sorry, I'm hearing some background sounds. Okay. Vayikra Shem Haba'er Asik. So he called the name of that well Asik, which means essentially a disputation, quarreling. He hit asku imo, because they quarreled with him. Okay, they contended with him. By the way, we remember also there's a little bit of an echo here, because that similar expression is mentioned regarding the shepherds of Lot, Abraham's nephew, and Abraham's shepherds. So again, there's some thematic issue going on here that the Torah is trying to imply. So esek is irur, it's a dispute. Ki hit asku imo, nit asku, okay, imo ale, they disputed with him regarding it. The meriva, through quarreling, the irur, same kind of idea, right? And disputation. They were quarreling and arguing over the water rights involved. And of course, the Torah is telling us that the shepherds, Isaac was Isaac's shepherds who had dug the well and had released the water, made it available. And now the shepherds of Gerar, the Philistines, are argued with them as to whose water it really was. And of course, in a sense, saying, well, yeah, maybe you dug the well, but the water actually belonged to us. So I again always feel that this is literary. There's something else going on here, but I, at this point, haven't figured it out. So I just worked a little bit on the Aramaic here, right? Ukra Shma, they called it Devera, words of Iska, of dispute. So here we go. Again, Vayach Peru, Ba'er Acheret, and so they dug out a different well. Vayarivu Gam Aleha, and they quarreled over that too. Gam too. Vayikra Shma Sikna, and he called its name enmity. This is sounding very symbolic, right? So, is this talking in general of parallel religions? I mean, I'm really stepping out there, and the idea of competition. That's clearly what we're dealing with here, and whether or not this is, again, I'm going out on a limb here very much, that if we think of these wells as being wells of knowledge, wells of wisdom, wells of spirituality, if we think of it in that way, that here we have people, all of whom may have religious purpose, quarreling over these things and acting in competition. So I admit very readily that I'm going way out on a limb on that one. So here we have Rashi working on the word sitna, right? Enmity. And he uses, this is according to Sfaria, is the way you pronounce this French word, nuisement, and Mila noshenet. So I have a feeling, looking up this Hebrew, sounds like the best I can translate that as, because it means like a borrowed word, something like that, or a word, the synonym. So my thought is that when he says sitna, is Rashi saying to us that sitna and asek are synonymous. They have the same kind of idea. And then simply the German, right? The Yiddish Hinderung, hindering, Störung. I'm not sure what exactly that word means, again, because I don't have my Yiddish English dictionary with me at this point. So, but obviously these are all synonymous ideas.
Well,
go ahead.
Mine has the first one you said enmity, and it says contention here. I'd say that's pretty synonymous. But then under sitna, it has in parentheses harm, wrong, or injury. So I think that's could be a little different.
Yes, it could. I don't think these are easy. We know that the word Satan, right, is here, right? There's the word sitna, and it has, and the Satan, the role of the Satan in at least biblical literature is like the prosecuting attorney. In other words, the way the Satan operates as an angel is that he looks to see all the foibles we have. And when we're doing something that's contrary to divine will, and takes it right back to God. In other words, he's more of an informer than necessarily one who's trying to trip us up although that's definitely out there. But the role that he has is of sort of that there's this dynamic of that is contrary to the benefit of human, of humanity. That the Satan is the one who sort of finds every fault with human behavior, tries to pick out and get into detail as to every little wrong thing that we do, because we know we're not perfect. And the Satan is the one who brings to light our imperfections before the Holy One, blessed be He. And in that role, that's his role. So, you want to bundle that up into this kind of word and see if there's the connection that way. But that's the role that Satan has. If you look at the book of Job, what he does is God is saying how great Job is, and Satan's coming to say, well, he's not that great. If you just lay your hand on him, you'll see how he's not going to really be that faithful. And then when God does that, and Job retains his faith, Satan comes back to God and says, well, if you touch the person's property, it's not that big a deal. But if you actually touch his own body and hurt him personally, well, then he'll give up. And God tests Job, at least for the sake of the book, in that way. But that's the role of Satan in that sense. So I'm wondering if there's a connection here, and it seems like I'm going out on a limb quite a bit today, of the whole idea of complaining, right? Because when you're complaining, you're focusing on the bad stuff rather than on the good stuff. So, take misham. So he went away from there. He took his camp and he moved off from there. Vayachpor be'er acheret. So he didn't give up. That's something that we can say is about Isaac's character, is that despite all these disadvantages and adversity, he keeps trying. He keeps trying. And so, in a sense, we're getting a picture of the level of faithfulness and attempt on Isaac's part to just keep going despite all this adversity that he was facing. At any rate, they then dig another well, Velo Ravu Aleha, and they did not contend against him regarding that well. So finally, he's successful after having a number of times when his work was being contested. Vayikra Shma Rechovot. Lovely name, actually. He called its name ample space, right? Rachav means wide, right? He didn't have to worry about having this stuff contested constantly and challenged. Vayomer, and again, he said, he thought, right? He thought, Ki ata hirchiv Hashem lanu. For now, Hashem has made wide for us, has given us ample space, ufarinu ba'aretz, so that we can be fruitful in the land. So let's take a look at this. Okay. Ufarinu ba'aretz, right? So Targumo, so the Aramaic translation, v'nefish ba'ara. And or here it's actually spelled v'nefush ba'ara. And it has to do with expanding, increasing, etc. in the land. That here we can, in fact, do well and thrive. Vayal misham be'er shava, and from there he went up to Be'er Sheva. Vayera elav Hashem balaylahu, and Hashem appeared to him that night. Interestingly, this is one of the few places where we read in Isaac, regarding Isaac, God speaking to him, that him having this revelation. With Abraham, we have a number of revelations, but with Isaac, we only have one. And likewise, with Jacob, we only, I believe, have one direct text that talks about such a revelation. Vayomer, and God said, Anochi Elohe Avraham Avicha. I am the God of Abraham, your father. So identifying himself that way. Al tira, do not fear. Ki itcha anochi, because I am with you. Uveirachticha, and I shall bless you. V'hir beiti et zaracha, and I will cause your seed to multiply. I will multiply your offspring. Ba'avur Avraham Avdi, on account of Abraham, my servant, my servant. So this certainly would underline the notion that the ultimate objective we have in our own lives is to be servants, to serve God, to find out how to do that successfully, and to devote ourselves to serving God. And of course, that involves so many different elements of our lives, including taking care of ourselves, making sure that we ourselves are in good condition to do that, and serving others, and being of service to this world and to this universe. The fact that he says, do not fear, implies that, if God was saying to Isaac, don't fear, we have to assume that Isaac was, in fact, in fear. And so I'm thinking that what would he have feared? Well, if we were to go to the, to the preceding texts, that he might have feared that there was no future for him, that every time he tried to establish something, it was going to be challenged, and that when he said at the last with Rechovot that God had given it, he was saying that in a sense of hoping that was true, that he was thinking it, but possibly now that we have this text that follows it, God is reassuring him that that in fact is the case. Vayiven Sham, I don't believe there's Rashi on this. No, we don't have any Rashi for a little bit. So, Vayiven Sham Mizbeach, and here again, we have not read about Isaac and any altars since the story of his Akedah, and that, of course, he did with Abraham, his father, but he built there an altar, Vayikra B'Shem Hashem, and there he called upon the name of the Lord, of Hashem. And exactly what we're talking about here isn't so clear. We just know that it was an act of devotion, that we can say. Vayet sham oholo, and he pitched his tent there. So there's this connection of this ability to serve God, right? And pitching his tent. Vayichru sham avdei Yitzchak be'er. And now look at this. This whole theme of Isaac digging wells, and the connection that we've had in reading this and sort of blending together all this information that we had. But at any rate, that his servants of Isaac dug there a well, and again, perhaps reinforcing what I said before, where it said they dug a well and no one was arguing with them. And of course, that could happen at any time. It just hadn't happened then. So here it's saying, in a sense, that this well that they dug, that wasn't contested, was truly something that he could do with a sense of security. Again, just trying to play with these themes and seeing what sense to make out of it. I think this might be a good place to stop, and I'm going to set the mark here. And just leave you a little time. If any of you would like to say something on the record, I'd be happy to do that before I stop recording. So I'm going to stop the share. Just any impressions that you might have of what's going on here before I stop everything. Nope. Okay. All right. We will stop the recording here and go off the record. And incidentally, it looks like we may be able to have class on Wednesday. Miles is off of school this week.